So I looked at the U.S. Constitution. I've done this several times, and I wanted to help you break it down a little bit, because oftentimes in the press, and certainly online, you only see half the Constitution. In fact, I've had this tweeted to me several times this week. They say, look, man, Second Amendment is so clear. It says right there, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is, wow, man, I didn't think about that. That is really clear. Oh, wait a minute. How about the other part of the amendment, the first half of the amendment? Oh, let's read the whole amendment for a second. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, you have to understand something about the process by which these amendments got ratified. The Founding Fathers debated these to no end. They debated literally every comma of the Second Amendment. The very last edit they did was to take out a comma. They had the first part, the right to keep and bear arms, in the first half of the sentence, in the first copy of this amendment, and then they switched it after debating it. So if they just wanted to write the second half of the amendment, the right to keep and bear arms for the people, they could have just written that. It's not like they didn't think about it. They thought about it, they debated it, and they decided, no, it's very important. In order for us to have militias, we need to have arms. This is for the point of a militia. See, that's a very important qualifier. That was the whole point of the amendment. If you're a strict constructionist, you can't ignore an enormously important part of the sentence. You're being wildly disingenuous if you do. And the fact that the Supreme Court read the first half of the sentence out of its interpretation is insane. That's just basically saying, I don't really care what the Constitution says. I'm just going to ignore parts of it I don't like.
When the United States Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision entitled District of Columbia versus Heller, struck down a D.C. law that prohibited the ownership of handguns within the District of Columbia. The 5-member majority threw out 200 years of legal precedent and ruled for the first time in our history that the Second Amendment is an individual right, not a right to protect outdated state militia.
So let's start off with this. A lot of people have different interpretations of the Second Amendment.
Right.
For example, that it was only for the militia.
Right.
Was it only for a militia exclusively, or what constitutes?
Back up to the philosophy. The philosophy was every human has a certain set of natural rights.
Right.
And those natural rights are what you find throughout nature. So when you get into nature, 3 things you'll find. If you start messing with an animal, they will defend their lives, they will defend their family, and they will defend their property. And I don't care if it's a horse or a dog or a cat or a mountain lion or a bear. So there is a natural right of self-defense. From that, they said, okay, every individual has the right, a God-given natural right to defend yourself. That's something government can't regulate. And by the way, you can defend yourself individually or you can defend yourself corporately.
Was that okay? So natural right. And by the way,
right.
that's also something you talk about quite a bit. These are not rights given by government; they're just recognized.
They're recognized by government. They're to be protected by governments, what the Declaration says. And so that right to self-defense can be individually, or it can be as a herd of elk. So I can corporately get all my neighbors together to defend something, or I can say, I'll take care of it myself. I got this. So that's what the Second Amendment does. It has an individual part and it has a corporate part. I have the individual right to self-defense and I have a corporate right of self-defense. And the recognition was, we don't care where the danger comes from. It might come from our own government, which is what happened back then. It might come from gangs in the neighborhood. It might come from a crazy neighbor or a crazy uncle. So whether it's me or all of us, we've got a right to individually and to corporately do it. And that's why it's interesting. They had no limitations really on what you could use to defend yourself.
Well, I want to get into that in a second. That's also, I think, a quote from Mason, if I'm not mistaken. He said, well, why? Who is the militia? It's the entire people, of course.
Now, look, the other interesting part here is, what do they mean by the people? It says, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the people could mean 2 different things. It could mean every person. Now, if it means every person, then you think, okay, good, then I've got the right to bear arms. That means me. Or it could mean the people of the United States. So, for example, they're referring to the security of a free state, and the state is trying to protect itself against the federal government in the context of the Founding Fathers, so it could mean the people of that state, right? So, for example, if the amendment read like this, the interpretation would be clear. If the amendment had said, in modern times, a strong national military being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear nuclear arms shall not be infringed. No one would interpret that as meaning that every single person gets to have nuclear arms. They would interpret that to mean, well, since we need a strong military, and that's essential for a free state, you cannot ban nuclear arms from the people of the United States. And that's a perfectly fine amendment to have, to say the United States military, in order to protect us, can and must have nuclear arms.
What did our founding fathers really mean when they referred to the need for a well-regulated militia? And what is a militia anyway? Is it that states were allowed to have their own armies without interference from the federal government? Or is it that citizens were allowed to have guns without interference from either the state or the federal government? In 1939, when organized crime was a serious problem, the Supreme Court ruled that a federal prohibition on the interstate transportation of sawed-off shotguns did not violate the Second Amendment. The court explained that the Second Amendment was designed to protect state militia. And as state militia were out of vogue in the 20th century, the continued relevance of the Second Amendment became highly questionable. But all this changed late in the 20th century, starting with the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy and the resulting passage of the Gun Control Act of 1968. Gun violence and restrictions on guns became a hot political issue. The issue continued as more and more violence occurred. We came, as a nation, struggled with such high-profile tragedies as the shooting of 15 students and teachers at Columbine High School in 1999. Now, at about the same time that this was occurring, a little-known organization, the National Rifle Association, was transforming itself from a sleepy nonprofit charity into a political powerhouse advocating for the rights of gun owners. When this transformation was complete, the NRA came to the position that the Second Amendment guaranteed the absolute right of every American citizen to have a gun. This became the cornerstone over the last 30 years of the NRA's advocacy and fundraising. The NRA had come up with this position all by itself without any basis in the law.
Read the words. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Sure, you need an organized military force to defend your country, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the people, in contrast with the militia. It doesn't say the right of the militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says the right of the people. Now, why the word people? Because the people who wrote this had just fought a war for 2 years against a tyrannical state militia. They knew the time might come when they'd have to do that again. So they made the possession of weapons a right that the militia could never take away. Now, gun control advocates say the phrasing is clumsy, and the comma separating the state from the people is just a pause to get your breath. Strange.